Welcome, everybody, to City Club's forum for today. I'm Linda Orsoletto. I'm president-elect for City Club of Central Oregon. It's great to see such a full room. Before we get started today, I wanted to thank our sponsors who really do make this possible. And it's a long list, and we want to add to it. ASI Wealth Management, the City of Bend, Central Oregon Community College, OSU Cascades, St. Charles, Pacific Source, Central Oregon Realtors Association, and Brooks Resources. Thank you so much. And today's forum sponsor is Desert Pine Group at Morgan Stanley. Thank you. We also have a number of community members, and you'll see their signs throughout the room. They have sponsored a table, and those include Ruth Williamson Consulting Group, Elaine Fardella, Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, City of Redmond, Collective Technology, Oregon Community Foundation, and Pinnacle Architecture. And last, we'd like to thank some of the City Club board members who have sponsored attendees today so they can come. So a little bit about our facilitator, Ruth Williamson. She's served our community in so many different ways. She's been a member of the Bend Park and Rec District, Bend 2030, which is now called Envision Bend, the City of Bend Transportation Advisory Committee, and many, many more in Bend, Deschutes National Forest, and Deschutes County. We're also lucky enough to have her as a board member for City Club. She works hard both in her consulting work and public service to align opportunities, bridge opposition, and sponsor fresh thinking. I love that. So without further ado, Ruth, come on up. Thank you.
Hi. I'm just going to savor you guys. Seriously. I just got to start by turning our attention to how fun it was to come into this room and see old friends, new friends, associates that you're working with. I mean, this is community. And if you would, I just want you to look around the room for a moment. It's okay, you can look at each other. Isn't it great? Okay, if the pandemic taught us anything, it was, don't take community for granted. And I also want to bring your attention to something that I experience when I call it, I get high off of community, because I really do. I love this town. I'm kind of obnoxious. I'm that person that people see in aisle 7 and they go over to aisle 8. But there's an opening that accompanies community, right? Just feel that. There's this sense of openness and possibility when we lean into community. So we at City Club are we're just grateful that you guys came through the snow and through the holidays and all of that you're taking some time to spend time with us today and dive into this really important topic, understanding, who's on the margins in our town, our towns, I should say, and what are the causes and conditions that are putting people on the margins, and how are we all a part of that same system, and possibly what could we do as a community, as a Central Oregon community. How could we do this a little bit differently? How could we maybe own this in a uniquely Central Oregon way? And I believe that we can. But first, it starts with just feeling community. So I'm going to get off of here as soon as I can. I'm up here by myself, and that's kind of awkward because I'm just part of a planning team that envisioned this forum today, and that team includes Daisy Lehman, wherever Daisy's hiding. Hi, Daisy. She's our program committee chair. Elaine Fardella, who's over here, And where's my Chris Otto? There he is over there. And a huge nod, really, you guys. City Club would not happen without Kim Gammond, our executive director. And yeah, thank you. Thank you. When I find you on aisle 8, I might be asking for some support so we can keep Kim in the seat. Also in the room, and you guys know each other, are community advocates. And let me see here. I don't want to go to that yet. I just want to mention for a moment that it was hard to break a few of you guys apart because you were making, like, I got to talk to you, I got to get a hold of you and stuff. These advocates are working closely together already. And one of the things I'd love anyone who's just curious about this topic to take away from today is that there's a heck of a lot going on across our region in coordinating services to address our most vulnerable. Okay, and we call that kind of a continuum of care, and you'll find on your table sort of a template of what that looks like. So feel free to take a look at that. We're going to give you a lot of resources to take home today, but I just want you to know that these folks are working deeply and wisely, and from a broad perspective, and also one person at a time. And so it's humble work, and it's patient work, and it takes this incredible coordination between head and heart to do this work well. So I'm going to put their names up here, and if you guys could just raise your hands. We don't have to, we don't have time right now to identify everybody with applause, but I think you'll feel it as we go forward. Okay, so these guys are our community advocates. They are professionals, and they form, and I don't know where ML Vitas is, but she described this so aptly. They're creating through their work a net, if you will, a net across our community to capture people and say, we got you, we're here. Look over here, look over there. Here's a place to get warm. And speaking of warm, there's people in our community who are not here right now, right? And it might be because they're looking for some propane today because it's cold outside. Or maybe they've got a line on a house or a bedroom in a house. And maybe they didn't have gas, or they don't have a convenient way to get here. Maybe they got that monkey on their back, right? Addiction. Maybe they're having a moment, a mental health moment. Maybe they're just feeling overwhelmed. And I don't need to have everybody raise their hands in this room, but we all know overwhelm, and we all know addiction, and we all know what it feels like to just be feeling those days where you feel like I'm just getting by. And that is one of the biggest conditions that keeps people on the margins, keeps people from feeling like their life matters. So we have to understand this through a very human lens, and we have to do it with some humility ourselves, because you know what? We know these things. We work with them. The only difference between the folks in this room today and the folks that are not is that we probably have family, and we certainly have community, and we feel we're a part of that community. So I just want to notice that. Okay. Let's dispel some myths. I feel like I should get out of the way of this one, but I'm gonna. Let's talk about myths around who's houseless and why. Myth number 1. People who are unhoused are not from around here. Okay? If we didn't offer services, they wouldn't be here. In fact, the point-in-time count from 2022 confirmed that most community members experiencing houselessness in Central Oregon have lived here for more than 3 years. And before becoming houseless, 84% of those individuals said that their last stable housing was right here in Oregon. Myth number 2. People who are houseless in Central Oregon are primarily adults. In fact, that same 2022 point-in-time count showed that 38% of the houseless people are children. Okay, they're kids, they're families, and the rates in these groups continue to increase. And in addition, in the 2019 study found that elderly people, 65 years of age and older, are experiencing homelessness in the US, and this will nearly triple in the next 8 years. Grandmas, grandpas. A lot of those that I've had the privilege of getting to know are people who they were kind of the heads of the households themselves. But now the household can't support them, and the healthcare system doesn't know what to do, or isn't able to respond. So I think that's pretty startling. The majority of people who are houseless are mentally ill. They abuse drugs, they abuse alcohol. In fact, 30% of those who experience chronic long-term homelessness have mental health conditions, and 50% have co-occurring substance use problems. The relationship between houselessness, mental illness, and substance abuse is super complex. And substance use can be both a cause and a consequence of mental illness and houselessness. The majority of people who are houseless are dangerous and violent criminals. In fact, unhoused individuals are more likely to have criminal justice interventions. However, a study indicated that this is primarily because, and I think we can get this, daily survival activities are criminalized, and meaning that they might be arrested for minor offenses like trespassing, littering, or loitering. And according to University of California, San Francisco study, persons who are houseless are in fact more likely to be the victim of a violent crime, especially if they are an unhoused woman, teen, or child. One more. People who are houseless are not trying hard enough. They just need to get a job. And a recent study estimates that 53% of people staying in houseless shelters and 40% of unsheltered people are employed, either full-time or part-time. And that those that are unsheltered face, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't advance. Sorry. You guys got to tell me. Yeah, so the ones that are unsheltered, they have substantial barriers like what we talked about. No transportation. I can't get cleaned up for that job interview because I don't have a place to shower. I don't have clothing. I don't have clothing, and I may not have a driver's license, identification. If you ever travel, you imagine what it would be like to not have ID on you. You're kind of stuck. So these are some of the myths that we wanted to just dispel right off the bat. And we're hoping that the conversation as we go forward dispels a few more myths. And the intention here today, I just got to say, we are not going to fix this problem because it is complex. And the people who work with this on a daily basis are going to tell you that probably over and over again. We're here simply to understand, you know, and again, to stay in that open curiosity, that not knowing stance, right? And with a little bit of humility go, gosh, I never thought of it that way. So I want to turn your attentions right now to your tables. The action is on the floor today. And at the tables, you're going to meet someone who has volunteered their time to be here today, who is a community advocate who works deeply in this space. And although the affiliations are from across our region, any one of these people can answer, I'm sure, every question you have. So bring it. Bring the good questions forward and have a conversation at your table. There's also, before you start chattering, there's a host at the table who is affiliated with City Club who's going to just make sure that all voices are included, okay? So you know what that means. If you like to talk, like me, maybe zip it a little bit. Make room for everybody, okay? We're going to take 15 minutes to do this. It is not going to be enough time. At 5 minutes before 20 minutes, I think is how we work that out, I'll give you a warning. And that's when the table hosts are going to kind of harvest the big outtakes from your conversation, okay? And they're going to post them up here. We got the Menti thing going today. So we'll get them up here on the screen so we can work with that. Then we're going to have a large group discussion, right? That's why I'm here. I'm the facilitator. But the rest of the program team is going to have a mic, so we'll have mics all over the room. And we're going to just talk about this together as a community. And I am confident that if we have a question or a big aha that emerges from one of the tables and it didn't get answered, we're going to be able to drill down on that with some good information. Okay? So 15 minutes, we're a little off time, but we'll make it up. I'll give you a warning, and enjoy your conversations. Thank you. I'm starting the timer because I want to be respectful of time. Okay? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this as a large group. Okay? Love on your table. You can come back later. Okay? Up on the screen, you're going to see some of the outtakes. We have a capacity problem more than just a funding problem. We must surge resources because time matters. We need a surge of affordable housing. And find more funding for houseless, but also those who need support to keep up with whatever is underneath that comment. Community needs to know more about the barriers, how to help best, ongoing help is needed. One-time money donations to service providers are the most effective way. It's important to have systems navigators to walk alongside families. We can't solve the housing affordability problem through the private market and will require a public or nonprofit solution. And then I also see there is a lack of warming shelters regionally. Burr. Okay, pop up a hand. Who'd like to just start the conversation? What did you notice at your table? What strikes you here? If there's an expert in the room that feels like you'd like to unpack one of these a little bit further and add some texture, please do, and apologies if I'm making that awful sound. Okay, Jacob, my man.
Since nobody else is raising their hand. So we talked a lot about housing, and a couple of big takeaways. What the community doesn't realize is how at risk and the barriers for people losing their home. And what Johanna told us is that the rate of evictions is increasing about 2 times every month. And Rachel put it very well. We're at the very beginning of our rental crisis.
Ooh. I'm looking over at Amy. You're looking back at Rachel. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Where's Rachel?
But okay. Johanna works for Thrive Central Oregon, so she sees this more, and she was the expert at our table. She sees this more on a daily basis in her work, and people coming to her for rental assistance or eviction help. And we at the city are very aware that the eviction moratorium ended September 30th, and we will have many evictions, and we are just at the beginning of them. And people will be losing more housing, and we do not have enough places for them to rent. And yes, I am the affordable housing manager for the city of Bend, so I'm acutely aware of this.
Thank you, Rachel. It's kind of a sobering thought. Who'd like to pick that thread up, please?
Well, I have something different.
Well, Emily, just bring it. What do you got?
Here, I could give. I'll take any microphone. Ooh, this is very hot mic. So our table, our amazing community advocate is Sophie here from Thrive also. And actually at the table we had many people who are experts in this particular genre of discussion. And one thing that we came back to and had all of us kind of had an aha breath moment was talking about burnout for care and service providers. There may be a capacity issue, but a lot of it has to do with mental and physical burnout for the service providers. I mean, Thrive sees people constantly and can't help them immediately all the time. And how does that, sit with them personally and professionally? So we don't know the solution yet necessarily, but being kind and human was brought up many, many times in our discussion, and making sure that we're kind to ourselves as well as the people that we work with.
Thanks, Emily.
Ruth, we have a comment over here. Look to your right.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, my name's Ali. I'm my first time at one of these meetings, so thank you for hosting it. For the comment about the affordable housing, so I'm a hospital medicine doctor at St. Charles. I just recently moved here from New York City, where I was practicing in Hawaii, but I'm originally from Oregon. I have a lot of patients who are waiting on these wait lists and they're in their 60s, some of them working locally, one waiting 3 years for the Lapine affordable housing place to open, and she has money to pay. And so I'm wondering, as a community, how we can reduce that wait time so we can help these people, because her ailments were actually related to sleeping on a couch. And then the money that it costs to pay for the hospitalization is also taxpayer dollars. And so it's like this whole thing kind of, I'm sure you guys are already working on it, but how do we reduce that time for the affordable housing to be available? Thank you.
Sorry.
Test.
I think we blew the system. I'm so sorry.
Test. Okay. I think we both talked at the same time, and it doesn't like that. This table is vocal, and this is Jim.
Yeah, this is the St. Charles table, actually. When I got to St. Charles in 1970, the hospital was downtown, and we had a lot of bushes around the hospital, and every one of those bushes was a place where people stayed because they were homeless. It was 2 blocks from the railroad, and we moved the hospital obviously out to where it is now, but that doesn't mean we're not being impacted by homeless care because of housing costs. We're having trouble recruiting people. That is going up the hill, and it's just starting being homeless, but also the cost of care to get here. People can't come here anymore.
Thanks, Jim. Elaine.
Yes. So we have a content expert at our table. Can you hear me? No. And so, Evan, can you speak?
Can y'all hear me? Awesome. So, yeah, my name's Evan Hendricks. I work for Shepherd's House. And it felt like where our table landed in regards to like a big idea that we could harvest was just finding ways to invite our community to be more curious about how folks end up in these kinds of situations, right? We all like to hear the really good stories of success coming out of houselessness, right? And we do a good job of sharing that, I think, throughout the community. But I think what the Bulletin and others in our region have been doing about how people ended up in this situation are really, really helpful for helping us identify with those realities, right? And identifying with the way that what brings people to this situation is so common and familiar, right? It's crisis, it's trauma, it's pain, it's disconnection. And the reality is most of these folks didn't have the layers of insulation or privilege or relationship that many of us enjoy that keep us from hitting the streets when crisis hits our lives, right? And so if we can generate curiosity through storytelling and through mediums like this is so encouraging as a provider to come to a room like this and realize there's 200 people that are curious about this reality and how we can continue to step in and help alleviate the pain and suffering of our friends and neighbors that call Bend home.
Thank you, Evan. I love your sweatshirt. Okay. I see a hand way at the back. Oh, we're stopping by Gwen, too. Okay, wait. Let's go with Gwen, and then we'll go with the lady at the back.
My name's Gwen, and I don't know how to work a mic. I'm with Bethlehem Inn, and we had an amazing discussion regarding how is it that we find folks so that we can do the outreach. Mandy Seeley here from Sisters, who is out there working on the outreach, Covo, Shepherd's House. We have a number of resources, Jericho Road, FAN. It's all the organizations that everyone needs to know about, that we work together, but it's a vast problem. And we want to find how we can do that not just one time a year for the point in time count, but really being able to know who is currently unhoused and how do we reach them. And that outreach is Thrive, daily, making those connections, preventing homelessness in the first place, but knowing that people out there have a community that cares and wants to help them succeed and get the resources to them. We talked about the HUD, the questions that are asked on the point in time count that go through the variety of domains that we all experience, but many of us have houses, jobs, families, and things to work with. So it's being aware that folks that are out there and not visible are looking for help and don't know always how to ask for it.
Thanks, Gwen. Yes.
Hi, I'm Amy Sabatini, and I worked at Ben High for 17 years, and one of my former students is here. I'd like you to hear what the youth are doing to help other youth. As you heard today, there's lots of children finding themselves either on the verge of or in houselessness, and they have no choice in that matter. And so would you be willing to share what you've been doing?
I'm Nev. I'm a junior at Bend High. Last year, me and a group of other students.
Yeah.
Thanks. Last year, a group of me and other students started a project to extend our health center, our Mosaic Medical Health Center at Bend High, and it was a pretty big success. We have data to show that students are accessing these resources. We've also done projects with FAN in the past, and yeah, it's pretty good to see what Bend High has been doing. Yeah.
Test. Is this one working? All right.
Hi,
Thank
I'm
you.
Roger with Epic Property Management. So we started today, and a word was used, and that is continuum of care, right? That this should be looked at as a continuum with lots of different solutions. And our table talked a lot about how we have been building in Central Oregon a lot of affordable housing. That affordable housing is at 50 to 60% of the area median income. There is very little housing in our community at the 30% and below. So what happens? So there's a vacuum that happens, and those folks that are 30% below go into the housing that is designated, that is earmarked to serve a different population, displacing that population. And the folks that are 0 to 30 going in are not going in with the support services that the community needs for them to have. They fail, they get evicted, they go back on the street, and now they have a harder time to get back into housing because they have an eviction on the record. What we need to do is sit down and be intentional. We need to be intentional in our housing so that we have that continuum of services and properties. And it gets to the other question around St. Charles, right? We need to be thinking about different types of housing with different types of priorities so that we can get folks that are medically vulnerable a priority in certain housing, right? But we have to get together as a community and decide where to put the valuable resources because we don't have the money to do it all. And this is, to me, the solution. Right? All of us in this room right now talking about what the problems are and coming up with, that plan of how we're going to spend our money strategically to be able to help the folks that we need. And the other big piece at our table that we talked about was, there's a lot of fees that the city and the county puts on builders to build in our area. And it keeps development from happening. And is there a way that we could get certain fees waived to attract more affordable housing builders? So those were the two big pieces that we talked about. Did I cover that?
Thank you so much. Daisy, it looks like you have somebody.
Hello, my name is Amy Fraley, and I'm with the City of Bend. I'm the project manager for houselessness services, specifically related to shelter. And at our table, our small but powerful table, we had a discussion about funding and the perception of how money is put forth for shelter. And so our big takeaway was the operational funding for the existing shelters that we have in Bend. And that essentially, that operational funding, we don't have sustainable funding from the state, and we're looking at 3-year out contracts. And so even to offer the baseline services that are provided by people in our community that the city touches through funding, it won't exist after 3 years unless we have more support. Did I get it all?
Ooh. 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 Where's our legislators?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
My name is Don Senecal. I'm a grant writer here in Central Oregon and a former planning commissioner for the city of Bend. Just a couple of questions, show of hands. How many people in this room represent or work for a social service organization? Thank you. Another show of hands. How many elected officials are there? How many policymakers are there in this room today? 1, 2, 3. I think that's a good illustration of what this crisis means. We come here and preach to the choir, and we may touch some people in our conversations around the table, but these organizations treat symptoms of homelessness and poverty, and everybody in this room knows why there is poverty and homelessness, not only here in Central Oregon, but in the whole country. And the bottom, and that is one word, and that word is greed. There's no other excuse. You can be a developer, but everything that is built, everything that is attempted to be made here is to be sold at the highest possible level of profit for the lowest possible investment. And the people that cannot afford are the ones that have always been subjected. It's a playground fallacy that is on a par with the Ku Klux Klan in their stereotyping homeless people as some people that are totally disposable. And I'm old and grumpy. But that's the reason. There's no other reason. Just look at the faces around the room, and you know what I just said is true. And if the policy people can't be here, that's a huge challenge. Thank you.
And I would just like to let that land. Thank you, Dawn. I just want to pause this, and I just want that to land for everybody. Thank you. Yeah, Chris, who you?
I'm Eric Nelson from Central Oregon Veteran Outreach. Thank you for having me here today. I'd like to make some comments to reflect what Evan and Gwen had already said about how we reach folks in our community. Central Oregon Veteran Outreach, the last word in our title, outreach, that's how we really meet people. And when people ask me what that means, I tend to tell them that it means that we meet people where they are and we try to engage people to provide an opportunity to help them on their housing journey to become permanently stably housed. And Gwen's not wrong. We need to do more of that, not just the pit count, but we need to be doing it every day. And we had some comments about folks staying in bushes downtown at the old hospital. Well, if anyone's ever lived in a major urban area like Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, they probably saw the same person every day, maybe for a year, a couple years. And every interaction with them was probably the same. But that interaction with them is an opportunity. When Evan talks about compassion and understanding and meeting people where they're at and trying to engage with them, I really do think that that's a solution here. We can get on the policymakers, that's true. But if we don't extend opportunities to people to try to make those connections, we can throw all the policy and money that we want at them. Part of the problem, I think, is that people will pass by the same person every day and say hi to them and then never extend the opportunity to help them get housed. So if I had an army of people, it would be people going out into the community and seeing how people are doing, even if they're not ready to be housed yet, because every one of those interactions is an opportunity.
Thank you, Eric. You know, I just want to add on, if I could, it's not really that complicated. It's people. We're people. Thank you. Yeah. Hey, Kath.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Because the mic starts scaring me out. So our table, which did include Mayor-elect Keebler, so I do want to give her credit for having been here.
Woot, woot.
Our table had a pretty positive spin that there are some opportunities around prevention and innovative solutions, which included, we had someone fortunately here who had come from Vermont and was intimately familiar with a program of shared housing, where particularly older adults who are on the verge of losing their homes or who weren't able to keep them for physical reasons, and younger students and children who maybe needed housing, or young families like the Bridge Meadows establishment in Redmond, which you guys may have heard of. If we could set up a way to coordinate that kind of house sharing, and we could do other things to help prevent. I know that there are funds in other cities that just write checks to people whose car dies, who miss a month of rent, who have a dental crisis. Well, any of those things can push particularly older adults on fixed incomes into houselessness. But if we could come together and we could come up with a house sharing program that we could coordinate, and we could ask OCF to help fund a way that we can write checks to people, if we could prevent people from becoming houseless in the first place, we have made a huge dent in the problem. And again, I totally agree that that takes personal outreach. We need people to listen and to be compassionate. But let's do more. Let's bring something together to help prevent any of our other friends and neighbors being houseless.
Yeah, Kathy, and I just thank you. We could do a whole forum, and we probably should do this on, where's my Elaine? Yeah, when we talk about on the margins, there's a lot of us that are straddling that line. You know, it's just one healthcare crisis, one missed rent, you know, and there you go. So that inflection point, I think, is really powerful to consider. Anyone else? Yes, please. Hey, Morgan.
Hey. It is really natural in the midst of a conversation like this to move to solutions, because I think all of us feel the weight of this issue, and we know names and stories, or we're learning more and more about the situation in Central Oregon and beyond. So I want to help us maybe a little bit at the end. I don't know, it's not my place, but there are big factors at play, right? There are big economic factors, there are big nationwide issues, there are worldwide influences that make our situation not unique, right? We're hearing stories of houselessness and the unhoused community growing across the country. And so that's easy to get overwhelmed. The issue's too big. How could we ever do it? There's not enough housing. There's not enough resources. And then we have these amazing service providers in the room and all these people who are engaged with our community every day in and day out. And the other temptation might be, besides throwing up our hands, it's too big to solve. The other temptation is to say, well, somebody else is going to take care of it. We've got these amazing people in the room who are doing this, so they'll get us there. And as we go from this place, as we've heard these stories, as we've dispelled these myths, I think the power in this room is maybe you're not going to be a service provider. Maybe you can contribute financially, but there's a lot of power in this room to continue dispelling these myths. There's a lot of power in offering true information in the midst of a community that is tempted to believe things that are not true about our neighbors. And so I just want to offer that as a next step that might not be too big, and it might not be kicking the can down the road or putting too much weight on the shoulders of our incredible service providers, but to say this is our collective responsibility. And one thing we can do is continue to offer facts and stories and names and continue to help our community humanize this population, because this is not a problem that's just theirs, and it's not a problem that's just our service providers. This is a challenge for our whole community to meet, and we can do it together.
Thank you, Morgan Schmidt. I tell you, I think that's a perfect place to pause again. Rehumanizing this discussion. I wasn't waiting for my mom to call. She might, though. I'm just thinking, on the one hand, it's complicated. And on the other hand, it's people. Right? It's just like Eric said, and just like Morgan just drove home. These are our people. And I have this crazy belief that if we own homelessness in Bend, Oregon, and Central Oregon, if we can do this, with some compassion and kindness, our bumper sticker, I'm not going to quote it, the one I'm talking about, we will do everything better as we grow and change and evolve. On the way out, I always notice the pictures in the river house, the historical pictures. It just can get lost in that storyline. We've come a long way, and we got a lovely future ahead of us, but we got to own it. And just trust yourself on this. If we can rehumanize this issue of housing insecurity, if we can really get behind it, what else can we do here? Well, you know, it's all possible. There's a lot that is possible. There is a lot, as Gwen pointed to, that is already being done. And I'm going to just, before we go to next steps, I'm going to take this moment to invite some applause for the folks that are working the front lines of this issue. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Alrighty, next steps. Well, there you have some. You can listen. The first stop for me was that the Homeless Leadership Coalition. Anybody can join. Susie Citizen, you can join. There's a ton of information that rotates through there. If Lindsay or Colleen or Eliza, are you in the room today? Hey, girl, thank you for coordinating that. It is a tremendous resource for our community. Just go there. If that's your one-stop shop, you'll find a lot. Attend a meeting, 8 o'clock on first Friday of every month, online. Yep. You can, of course, give money and time and expertise. That's always welcome. And one little thing, just talk to somebody that wasn't here today. One thing that you learned, one thing that maybe just touched your heart a little bit, and we're like, wow, I never really thought about that. And or one thing that inspired you, like I'm inspired to know that some of the kids in our community are tackling this head on. Thank you back there. I see you with that hat on. I see that. I see you sitting at that table. I love turning NIMBY into YIMBY. Do we got that up there? NIMBY, of course, not in my backyard. We'd work that terrain a little bit. I'm looking at Jim Porter here. Yes, in my backyard. Let's give it a try. Let's just give it a try. What if it wasn't so invisible? What if we were a little more comfortable with those in our community who are feeling vulnerable? Certainly show up for Rachel and Amy at City Council and county and state level. What was I going to say? Those meetings can be hard. Whereas, Melanie and Mike can, it's a tough arena. They could use support sometimes. And at the Park District too, right, Savi? Yeah, I mean, just show up. Get involved in the ways that are right for you. Donna Burklow reminded me that. If pets are your thing, help out at the Humane Society. Pets are a huge lifeline for folks, right? If you love to cook, go cook at the family kitchen. If you love people, there's a lot of places to interface and just bring some love in. The love you guys have at home is worth a lot on the street. Okay, don't get overwhelmed. I know, I hate these kind of slides. I just had to cram it in. Take a picture of this, but also know that as you leave, there's going to be a resource sheet out in the lobby, and you can pick up a lot of these addresses. There's so much good stuff on this slide. There's a couple of great Atlantic articles at the bottom. Thank you, Kathy, for that last one. I think Central Oregon Homelessness, that's the Homeless Leadership Coalition. Also, houseless in Deschutes County. Where's Cheyenne? Thank you. That is a killer website. So you didn't do that? Well, I love that one. It's got big letters. It's graphic. That's my kind of information. Anyhow, these are great resources across the board, local as well as across the country. So there's good stuff there. What else do I want to tell you before we cut you loose? We're going to send you a survey. Please take about 5 minutes max to fill it out and let us know what you thought about this forum, this format, and in particular, and I think a lot of things emerged today, what else do you want to talk about? Because we can do this again. It is powerful to sit in community. It is powerful to look around the room and know, gosh, I am not alone. And we can do this together. And in the course, as I say, of building community around our most vulnerable, we expand our community and our experience of that in lots of different ways. Okay, finally, there has been a generous offer, which is to stay, if you'd like, for the final 30 minutes or so, if you want to go talk to somebody one-on-one, if you want to take this moment. Many of the community advocates have offered to stay around until 1:30, so it's not a forever invitation, but we've got a little extra time, okay? I'm going to close this. I know Kim's over here. I love this quote. Community is a group of people who agree to grow together. I'm pointing at Evan because he shot that to me the other morning, and I was going, that's perfect. Yeah, we agree. Let's agree, okay? Let's just agree. Let's do this, Bend. I mean, I keep saying Bend because I love my town, but I love Central Oregon. Let's do this in a Central Oregon way. Let's do it together. Okay, that's all we got.
Thank you, Ruth. Oh boy, find mine. All right. So thank you to our table hosts and our community experts, and thank you to Ruth, Elaine, Chris, and Daisy for planning this forum. We tried a very different format today, so please do take time to take that survey that you're going to get later this afternoon and tell us what you thought. Thank you to all our elected leaders here today. And on January 19th, we're going to kick off our 2023 programs with a conversation about the challenges in local youth sports and how we can find solutions to the inequities currently happening in that space. Registration will open next week for members. As we come to the end of 2022, please watch your email for opportunities like our 2023 Forum Season Pass, table sponsor packages, and membership options to help increase your and our community's involvement with City Club. If you'd like to continue the conversation at your tables, as Ruth mentioned, please go ahead and stay for a while and chat. And thank you for being here today.